On today's episode of Podcast for Inquiry, I speak with Marie-Claire Khadij. Marie-Claire has been serving as a military chaplain since 2017 and became the first Humanist Chaplain in the Canadian Armed Forces in May 2022. Her aim is to continue to grow the number of Humanist chaplains in the CAF to ensure that all members, including humanists, agnostics, atheists, and all with secular worldviews, are represented and can access specific services tailored to their worldview. In today's episode, I speak with Marie-Claire about her journey from being raised in a very religious Roman Catholic household and her journey to humanism and how she came to join the Canadian Armed Forces and become its first military humanist chaplain. I bring you my conversation with Marie-Claire Khadij. Welcome to the Podcast for Inquiry, brought to you by the Centre for Inquiry Canada, a national educational charity supporting your community for reason, compassion, and secular humanist values. You have answers, we have questions. I'm your host, Leslie Rosenblood, board member and secular chair for CFIC. Welcome. So, Marie-Claire Khadij, thank you so much for coming onto Podcast for Inquiry today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, the reason that I'm speaking with you today is that you are a pioneer of sorts. You are the first humanist chaplain in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I promise you we'll get to that. But I want to make this a chronological journey. So I want to start with when you were a child. You were not born into or raised within a humanist household. That's something that came later. So my understanding is that you were born into a Roman Catholic family. So tell me a little bit about what that was like growing up in a Roman Catholic, and how much of that you internalized and became a part of your identity as a child and young adult.
Sure. So yeah, as you said, I was born in a practicing Roman Catholic family that was much more on the conservative side of things. So believing in God was so important, and it influenced our entire life. We had a very strong prayer life. We were practicing, going to church, and all of that. And until I was pretty much 18, that was very important to me. And then when I was 18, with the support of my parents, I actually went for a trip in Bolivia to work with nuns in Oruro, which I really loved. It was on top of a mountain. It was quite an adventure. Wow. Yes, I was there for 6 months. And that's when, interestingly enough, it's going with living with these nuns that I started having another perspective, that there was more to the world in general. And when I came back, I decided to go study theology, because I wanted to understand better what I was believing and where all of these ideas that I had grown up with were coming from.
Okay, so you went to a Roman Catholic nunnery in Bolivia. Mm-hmm. So that was, if anything, even more intense of a Roman Catholic surroundings than life in your home. So what was it about it that prompted doubts, or was it just or was it doubts, or was it just a more intense curiosity that led you to study theology after that?
It's just I had been very focused before on a closed way to see religion, like that I had the entire truth. And going to another country, seeing how they were living, although they were Roman Catholics, but they were experiencing and living their religion differently. And also the local people had different spiritualities as well, that were not just Catholic. And it just allowed me to see that there was so much more out there that I didn't know about.
So even within Catholicism, there were different practices, different traditions, different ways of approaching the faith. And that made you realize that it wasn't just the way that you had experienced up to then, that there's, even within Catholicism, multiple paths to God, I guess. And then that led to, well, if there's multiple paths to God, maybe there's multiple paths to life. Is that
It was like I wanted to understand better, because if we could have all these different perspectives, where were they actually coming from? And I
okay?
really enjoyed my studies in theology. I went to Dominican College in Ottawa,
Hmm.
and that's where I did my studies. And I had amazing teachers that were really teaching us how to go deep and ask questions. And that's what I really appreciated from them. We would do exegesis of the Bible, and in all the courses, we were encouraged to think things through. And I'm really grateful to them, because that's where I think I developed this sense of questioning. And when I finished my studies, my perspective on faith and life had completely changed. I would say back then I still believed in God, but I was not necessarily practicing anymore, because I had such a more wide and much more wider perspective than just Roman Catholic.
All right. So this is actually fascinating. I want to delve into that a little bit more because uh, I'm someone who has not studied theology in a formal sense,
Mhm.
uh, but I would imagine that if you come in a devout believer, as you were, and what is it about learning more about the faith, about the history, about the text, about the context in which it was written, and the effect it has had on the world? I'm assuming that's all part of the curriculum that you would have
Uh-huh.
studied. How does that lead someone that starts with a very strong faith to to considerable doubt? I want to accurately portray how you were looking at the world at the time. How does learning more erode your faith? Or can you or what was it about studying theology that introduced this doubt? I'd like to learn more about that.
It's just, for example, I love the story of Moses, and most of us know it. He freed his people, he came to the sea, and he opened the sea, and it parted, and all the people could went through.
Right,
But
the
what
Ten Commandments. It's a great film.
after yes, but it's so fascinating when I had an exegesis class of the Old Testament and studying those passages and seeing that the original text, because we're able through different techniques to find the original text the way it was written, was so much more simpler and less dramatic than what is described. It was basically just the sea, went away, and then they were able to pass, and then it came back. But as these
That sounds
texts,
more like a tide than a parting of the sea.
it does, and then as the text was rewritten, back then, every time it was rewritten, it was reinterpreted by the writer for their own reality at the time. And just learning to see the Bible in that way as a human experience, that as they were sharing these texts with the next generation, each generation were adding their interpretation on it and building onto it, which I find beautiful. But to me, also makes it much more of a human experience.
So what you're saying is that when the actual words of the Bible, because if you listen particularly to American politicians or evangelical Christians from the United States, they will say every word of the Bible is God's true word, like directly from God to the page. There is no human interpretation, which always struck me as a little bit odd because it has been translated from even non-biblical scholars know that the Bible was not originally written in English. It was written, I think, in ancient Aramaic. All surviving copies went through ancient Greek, but there's lots of other languages. But what you're saying is that it didn't just change. A text has to change and has to be interpreted when it's translated from one language to another, because there's very rarely words.
Yes,
But even once it was translated into English, it every generation or so, the words and the text was updated for the
I would say before
times.
its translation, like the original text.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
most of the texts first were verbal tradition. And then every time they would recopy their text, often they would reinterpret them based on their current reality.
Oh, so this was from way back, right at the
Yes, from
start,
way
not just
back, from way
okay.
back.
Okay.
But you're right. There's also a whole history of traduction of the Bible once it was translated. But me, I refer to way back then when they would rewrite the text on the different methods that they had back then. And some people, because history back then, it wasn't recorded the way we do now. It wasn't just about the facts. It was about what is pertinent. What do we learn from this for us today? and it was readapted to each generation.
I've often drawn an analogy for my own purposes between the Bible and the works of Shakespeare. There is tremendous wisdom to be gleaned from both, but neither are infallible, and in some cases they describe horrific acts, which is okay in a work of literature, but to hold up horrific acts as pure wisdom and goodness and love is
Mhm.
problematic in my view.
Yeah.
So
So that's the thing, is that for me, and I respect everyone's view on how they want to view the Bible, right? But for me, that was my experience, and this is how I perceived it and how I perceive it still to today. So all of these elements and much more that through my studies kind of really opened my eyes that there was so much more to life and different reality of other religions as well, philosophy, and just really my mind was blown with by
right.
all these different knowledges, and that's when I really started thinking for myself.
Was it shortly after that you joined the military, the Canadian Armed Forces?
So back then, now I'm about my 21.
Okay.
That's when I met my husband and got married. And
Ah, okay.
he became a calf chaplain during that time.
He
So we
became
went
a calf chaplain.
yes, thank you, a Canadian Armed Forces chaplain
Okay.
during
So he
that
was
time.
already in the military when you met him.
He was no, he was starting his process.
Okay.
So I was able to support him during that time.
Okay.
And then we were posted to Petawawa, where I worked with military families. Afterwards, we were posted to Moose Jaw in Saskatchewan. And that's where I started thinking that I would also be interested in doing that work because I was working as a civilian in the military communities and I
Right.
was really enjoying it. It's not easy work. When we were in Petawawa, that was during the time of Afghanistan, the deployment in Afghanistan.
Right.
So
So a lot.
supporting families.
Right. Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, I have to give a disclaimer here. My knowledge of the military comes from basically two sources. One is popular culture, books and movies, which I don't think is very reliable. And I have a couple close friends, including one of my best friends, who's a military veteran and served in Afghanistan. And
I'm sure you've heard many stories.
I have, but my actual knowledge of how the military works is limited to that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'm going to have to ask you to explain certain things that might be very obvious to you and other folks that are involved with the armed forces. So your husband has just joined, and you are following him around to
Mhm.
wherever he happens to be posted. He is, I'm assuming, also a Roman Catholic.
Yes, he is.
Okay, so you've got a Roman Catholic chaplain
Mhm.
uh, who's being posted and is helping people, I guess, both pre deployment as they.
Yes, yes. So during deployments, chaplains are very active. They help with pre-deployment. They also deploy with the troops, so they
Okay,
go overseas, and also they assist with when the chaplains are deployed overseas with the member chaplains that stay behind support the families.
so let me ask you to pause for just a moment and just explain in general, what does a chaplain do? What is a chaplain's role in the military? I mean, we might know about it from MASH or whatever, but I don't actually have knowledge about what a chaplain's job is.
Mhm.
So can you explain that to me?
Yeah, sure. So, chaplains, we contribute to the spiritual well being of the troops and their family. Now, I use the term spiritual, but it's important to understand that in the camp forces, spiritual doesn't necessarily equal religion. Spirituality is seen as a search for meaning, for purpose, for identity. And some of it may take place within a religion, but not for everyone, right?
Okay.
So the way to see it is that everybody has a spiritual well-being, and chaplains were there to care for that. What this means in the everyday is that when members wish to speak to someone, usually we're the front line. They'll come to us, whether that's back home, whether it's overseas on deployment, and we're an ear to listen to whatever they're going through, and we also have resources that they can access. We can advise them, and we also connect with the other resources. For example, if they need medical support or mental health support, we refer that to them.
Yeah, so you sound like like this. Oh, the civilian equivalent would be like a social worker, sort of a frontline first contact, and then you can like refer them to specialists if necessary.
It's similar, but what's different is that we also each represent our own religious tradition or
Okay.
spiritual tradition in my case, because I'm not religion, I'm a humanist. So the added layer to it is because in the armed forces, members can go through quite difficult times. As you know, there's challenges, and that often challenges people in their spirituality, whatever it is. So as chaplains, we represent many different denominations. Right now, we have Christian chaplains, Muslim, Jewish, Sikh, Unitarian Universalist, Buddhist, and Humanist. So that means that if members have specific question according to their tradition, they're also able to request to speak specifically to one of those chaplains.
Okay. So your husband was a Christian, specifically Roman Catholic chaplain. You're following him around and helping out in the community as a civilian, and you think, I want to. What's the transition from helping out as a civilian to joining the military
Yeah, so I
yourself?
really liked helping out as a civilian because we have amazing civilian staff providing support on each base to
Hmm.
military members and their family. But I really loved what he was doing and him being able to be with the people, the members, wherever they were going and exercise or in their units or deploying. But to be honest, I didn't know if I could do it physically. I am not a very sport oriented person. And
Hmm.
as you know, I mean, you've all seen videos. There's a basic training to pass in order to join the CAM forces.
Right, all the
And
crawling on the ground and climbing ropes and going over walls and
yes, all of that. And I think for I'm not the only woman who they see this and it can be perceived as an obstacle.
mhm.
So that's honestly why it took me a while, and also because I was still pretty young when my husband first joined, and I didn't feel like I had enough life experience yet to be a guide to those members who come to see us, because it takes a lot of wisdom and life experience. My
Mhm.
husband is a little older than me, but yeah, when I was in Bunjia, I decided to try it out. So I trained quite a bit, but it was interesting because in basic training, I realized that it's not just about the physical fitness, right? It's about your mental strength and your resilience. And are you able to overcome those obstacles and focus on the mission and work as a team? And that's what makes you a strength in the military, even more than just the physical piece. So I was happy I was able to make it happen. And
Mhm.
back then, the only options to join as a chaplain was either a Christian, Jewish, and Muslim.
Okay.
And for
So
me,
the three Abrahamic faiths.
exactly. And for me, I wasn't necessarily very involved in Catholicism, but I really wanted to be a chaplain. And I was comfortable at the time coming in as a Catholic chaplain because for me, I believe that everyone should go on the path that they wish. So I have no problem journeying with Catholic members who wish to explore more Catholicism, or a Muslim member who wish to explore more the Muslim faith. So that's why at that point I was comfortable. I didn't mind too much coming in as a Catholic chaplain.
Okay, but but by this point you'd been to Bolivia, you studied theology, you were having doubts, I suppose. So officially, you're a Roman Catholic chaplain, but you describe to me, like, what was your personal worldview at the time? Were you still doubtful? Were you no longer practicing?
Back then, I believed in, I think I still had a theistic vision of the world, but it was very wide. And I really strongly believe that everyone should follow, like each tradition had positives that could fulfill a person. So just a very respectful approach. I always said to me, if you're not hurting yourself, if you're not hurting other people, and if you're not brainwashed, you can believe whatever you want, and I'll support you. Those were like my three criterias, right?
Okay.
Um, and but that's the thing, is that in 2018, because I joined in 2017, but in 2018, Shrishti Huku applied. She's a member of Humanist Canada. She applied to try to become the first Humanist chaplain in the Kinam forces.
Oh, okay. And she
And
she was also a part of the Canadian Armed Forces.
so she applied. She
She
was a
oh,
Humanist Canada member, but she applied to
oh, I
be.
see. Okay.
So
Yeah.
she's the one, and this is important because she's the one who actually opened the path for this to take place. And I met her in 2020, and started journeying with her. And I just felt so much more comfortable within humanism. That's how I was able to discover more of humanism.
I'm looking. I'll be speaking with Shristi. Will be an upcoming guest. It'll be a couple months, I think, but she'll be an upcoming guest on Podcast for Inquiry. So
She's absolutely amazing, and I owe her a lot because really she's the one who did all of that groundwork.
okay.
And I met her in 2020. I supported her, journeyed with her, and I was so much more comfortable within humanism because by that time, I, I had become more of an agnostic, meaning I don't know if there is a God or not. So I prefer basing myself on what I can prove, like our common humanity, life.
hmm
And if there's something, there's something. But I just was at the point where for me, it was much more important to focus on what we all had in common, which for me is our humanity.
Which
I, and
sounds
I
sounds good to me. Yes.
and I was also uncomfortable because of some of the values in the Catholic Church that just never fit with mine. I mean, I'm a feminist. I'm a huge 2S LGBTQIA plus ally. Um, so it's just my values didn't align with the Catholic Church. And that's the thing is, Shrishti, unfortunately, in her process, she didn't pass the medical piece for a technicality. She
hmm
didn't pass the medical piece of the Canadian forces to be able to join. So she had done all of this, and unfortunately,
At the last moment, was turned down.
yes, and that was in the 2021, in the beginning of the winter. I was on deployment. I was in Latvia. I was deployed, um, and the path was there to make it happen. And I had a conversation with her. I said, "Well, I mean, because she was supposed to be the first, and I felt bad because I felt like I was stepping in, you know.
hmm
But she was comfortable. She said, "If it's anyone, you go ahead." So during my deployment in Latvia, that's when I started the process, believe it or not, to try to apply to become a humanist chaplain.
So tell me a bit about that, because at the time, as you said, it was just the three Abrahamic faiths. There was the
Mhm.
Christianity, Islam, and Judaism that were represented. Humanism does not have a theistic element to it. In fact, it's explicitly non-theistic as a philosophy.
Mhm.
That
Yes.
from what I know of the armed forces, which admittedly is little, um, that does not that would not go over well. That goes quite against the cultural norms of the Canadian military. Did you find any resistance to being a non-theistic humanist chaplain when it did not no such thing had ever existed in Canada before?
So basically, you're right. There was the Abrahamic faith, but what happened also in 2020 is that's when the first Sikh came in, as well as the first Unitarian Universalist
Okay.
and the first Buddhist. So
Okay.
they
So
had
2020 was a big year.
yes. So that's when yes. So for the diversity in the armed forces and within the chaplaincy, definitely. And they had already, for them to be able to come in, the chaplaincy had to rework their norms because before you needed a master's in pastoral studies or equivalent or theology, but now they kind of had to re-see what type of masters would be acceptable, which kind of started to open the way for humanism to come in. And then another thing that happened, and this is a public document if anyone wants to research it, was there was a review done of the Royal Canadian Chaplain Services. And that's available online. But what it showed is that 39% of Canadian Armed Forces members do not associate with a religion. 39%, which is a huge number. And that's why, and that actually, if you look at society in general and at recent stats that Statistic Canada published, it
Mhm.
kind of corresponds to the society in general
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
it depends on which survey you look at, but that's within a few percentage points of the general Canadian population.
Exactly. And what's important to understand is as CAF chaplains, we're one chaplaincy in Canada, which I love. So we all, no matter our tradition,
hmm
whether it's religious or spiritual, we're one team. We all work together, and no matter what chaplain members go see, they receive the same service. The only difference is if a member asks specifically for a certain tradition. For example, they say, "I'm Sikh, and I'd like to specifically talk about that with a Sikh chaplain." then
Right.
we'll refer them. But in general, we all do the same work. So those members were receiving chaplain services, but they weren't represented. Those
Right.
39% members. I call them the HAA plus, humanist, atheist, agnostic, and all other secular worldviews.
Right. Yeah, whatever you want to. Yeah. There's a wide range. The non-believers, the free thinkers. Yeah.
Exactly. So that kind of prepped the way to say we need to also represent these members within the chaplaincy, because diversity and representation is important. So you're right. It was a big change, and it's still happening. I'm still the only one as of now.
Okay.
We're
I was going to ask.
recruiting.
Yeah.
Yes. So since May, it became official in May 2022 because I came back from deployment. I did some training. May
Oh, so
2022, it
it
became
hasn't even
official.
been a year.
It's very recent,
Yeah.
and we're still figuring out a lot of things as we go. But I can tell you the response from Canadian Armed Forces member to this announcement has been huge. I received hundreds of communications, whether it's through email or messenger, of members across Canada and even deployed members telling me, I'm an atheist. I'm so glad we're finally represented. Or I'm an agnostic and had no idea that one day, there would be a
That's
chaplain to
that's
represent
heartwarming.
me.
That's wonderful.
Oh, it was such an honor, and it was so touching to just see my mailbox explode. And that showed to me that we were really answering a need. Because again, those members know they can go to any chaplain and get services, but it's the feeling of being represented. And that's why we try to diversify the CAF chaplaincy as much as we can as well, which is really unique. I mean, I can say like two of my best work friends, one of them is Jewish, and the other one, she's Muslim. And they're my closest, work friends.
Hmm.
And there are so many countries where we wouldn't even talk to each other. And that's what's beautiful about the CAF chaplaincy, the Common Forces chaplaincy, is we're all one team. We're not different chaplaincies. We're one team together working for the well-being of all the members, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, that's great. Uh, I'm feeling good right now. I had expected to hear a tale of like having to fight through the thicket of bureaucracy and fighting bigotry, either soft or explicit, and that it was actually a fairly straightforward process. I guess Shristi helped a lot
She did. She did. And
in the blazing the path forward.
she did. And don't get me wrong, in the day to day, it's not always easy, right?
But
Because
it's not. But it's
obviously,
yeah. I mean, you're okay. I don't want to minimize the. You've got a real job, and it's an emotionally. From what you've described, I can imagine
mhm,
very easily how it would be emotionally draining. But uh, it's no. The sense that I'm getting from you and what I'm responding to right now
mhm,
is that it's not additionally difficult because you're a humanist chaplain. That it's just as you have a challenging job, and it's still challenging,
mhm.
but it's not challenging because you're a humanist chaplain as opposed to a Roman Catholic chaplain.
No, I was really well received within the CAM forces by members. And that's the thing, is that the truth is, our tradition, whether it's religious or spiritual as chaplain, is what inspires us to do the work. But the way we do our work is reflected by what the member in front of us wants, right? And that's what's important. It's not
Yeah.
our own tradition. So that's why I say as well, I'm absolutely comfortable journeying with members of all kinds of traditions, whether it's religious or not, because it's not about me; it's about them and what they wish to explore on their journey, and that's the beauty of it.
That's great. So what's what's next for you? I mean, you've gone on a personal journey from Roman Catholicism to agnosticism to humanism. You went from student to I guess I'm not sure what the right phrase is, but you were an army wife
Yeah,
going
yeah,
from place
military spouse. Yes, yeah.
you were a military spouse to becoming a member of the armed forces in the chaplaincy, and then coming. I don't know if coming out is the right phrase, but coming out as a non-believer,
I
not
guess so. Yeah.
and you know, and becoming the first explicitly humanist chaplain. So that's quite the journey already, and congratulations.
Thank you.
What's next?
So two things. First of all, there are other countries that are also exploring integrating humanist chaplains within their defense team. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm very active trying to support them because I'm creating a lot of things from scratch. There's only 4 countries as of now that have humanist chaplains. You have the Netherlands that were first, then you have Belgium, you have Norway more recently, and then us. There's also the Australian Navy, who has, I believe they call them well-being officers, but they're not part of the chaplaincy. It's a separate thing in the Australian Navy. So this is still pretty new. And all of us are trying to support other militaries to go forward because, like I said, it's so important for members to feel that they're represented. And the number of atheists, agnostics, humanists, other secular worldview is growing.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about the Scandinavian countries, Australia, I think Scandinavia, I think that genuine believers are a minority already, and it's
So
somewhere close to
representation.
that in Australia as well.
Yes, so representation is so important. And then the other thing that I'm really working on here is, well, for now, I'm alone. So recruitment is a huge thing. And because this is so new, humanist candidates don't necessarily fit the mold that, honestly, the mold that is being used, we inherited from the Protestants and the Roman Catholic before. So to manage to fit in that system, there's a lot of work that's being done and to see, what do we want humanist chaplains to bring to the table in terms of experience?
Right.
How are we training them? So right now we have 8 candidates right now that they're not in the military yet. They're with Humanist Canada, and we're in the process of training them and journeying with them in the hopes that they'll be selected.
Oh, so when you're saying when you're training them, they're not. Are they part of the military already, or they're
No, no. So
okay?
because you need to become trained with Humanist Canada first, they're the organization that endorses us. Each chaplain is
Ah,
endorsed by usually a religious organization, but
okay,
us, it's by Humanist Canada.
okay.
So they need to say this person is good to go to be a chaplain in the armed
Okay, so
forces.
so anyone that wants to join the military as a humanist chaplain must first be endorsed by Humanist Canada. And of course, Humanist Canada is going to do their due diligence and make sure that this person is going to be an excellent humanist chaplain, an excellent representative of humanism, as well as capable of providing chaplaincy services.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So right now we have these candidates in training, but we need more candidates, and that's what we're looking for. And basically, it's what we're looking for is members that are interested in humanism and in providing this type of care to military members.
All right. Well, I will put a link to anyone that might listening to this show who is interested potentially of becoming a humanist chaplain. We'll put a link to the appropriate Humanist Canada page in the show notes, so
Perfect.
you can check out the show notes and if this sounds appealing to you, by all means, click on the link and become a part of that program.
Yeah, it's very rewarding, honestly, to be a CAF chaplain because, like I said, you're that first line of support. And also, something that's really neat is we're not part of in a unit, which is like an entity with military members and a military structure. We're not part of that chain of command. So, as a chaplain, I can go see a private or corporal who are like the lower ranks in the CAF, or I can go see directly the commandant of the unit. We get to go and care and advise members from all levels of the chain of command. And that's very valuable, especially in a structure that can be rigid, like the military, because
Mm-hmm.
we know, because we spend our days walking, visiting people, watching them do their work, helping them out. So we know the morale of the unit and we know what can be maybe a little bit improved. And we're able to make significant changes in just the quality of the well-being of the members. So it's really fascinating as a job.
So I'm going to ask. I don't want to get too deep into the details of your job, but there's something that I'm always that I'm curious about, and that's again my understanding of military culture is it's pretty macho uh, admitting to any feelings of doubt or of being unsure about things or of regret of something that you've done, or guilt or anxiety about what you might be required to do, any fear that you might have, putting that just putting that in words and actually saying that will be viewed as weak and um, and punished either socially from your peers or officially from your superior officers. So what is there a uh, what's the level of confidentiality if I come to you, if I'm a serving member of whatever rank, and I come to you and I'm having doubts or fears or nightmares or whatever issues I'm having, and I come to you and uh, am I assured that this is not going to get out any further, or how would my anxiety of putting voice to my own doubts be assuaged if so that I would actually feel okay to come to
Hmm.
either you, Marie Claire, or any other chaplain in the armed forces.
That's a good question. And I just want to nuance a little bit because what you've described about basically that taboo, right? About seeing a chaplain or mental health.
Yes.
Um, I fully agree that in the past that has been a lot the case in the armed forces. But since then, there's been much effort to remove the taboo of getting mental health support and accessing chaplain
Okay.
services. I'm not saying it's perfect at all, but there's been huge progress to help out. But I agree sometimes it's still very hard. And let's be honest, even just me as a human being, if I have a problem, it can be embarrassing to have to say, oh, I should go talk to someone about it, right? We
Absolutely.
all have our own pride.
I think that is a taboo in society at large, and I would like
Still.
to see that reduced or eliminated.
Mhm.
My sense, and this is as an outsider, my sense is that that taboo is even stronger in military circles.
Yes, it's getting better, but it's
Okay.
still there.
Okay.
And that's why, as chaplains, which is really amazing, it's completely confidential what members tell us, except if they plan to harm themselves, if they plan to harm others, or if there's a child that's potentially in an abusive situation. But
Okay.
apart from that, even if our chain of command says, orders us, tell me what they have said, we will not say anything.
Okay, so it sounds
It's
a lot like seeing like a psychiatrist or something.
yes,
There's a
yes.
sense of doctor patient, well, I guess chaplain serving member
Chaplains that
confidentiality.
remember confidential, and it's actually beautiful because our the location where we meet members, there's many different locations. Like we have offices, but when we're in the field, which is when we're in training outside, for example, sometimes it's in a car, in the back of a vehicle. It can be anywhere. But a chaplain is able to create that safe space, and that's often when members will cry and say, "I never cry," or they'll say, "I've never told this to anyone," or "I've never thought about this." And it's very beautiful because we create that space where members can just really let it all out in front of someone who will not judge them because like we are there to support them. And and some of it can be traumas from the past from tours, but some of it can just be family difficulties that they're experiencing or just general work issues. And we're that presence, that calming presence that's there for them to support them through it. And often, honestly, like I've had members come, just let it all out and tell me, "Oh, thank you so much. That's all I needed," and leave. And I haven't said a word.
And
And
you
I'm
don't have
like,
to say anything.
and me, I'm just like, I love my job because this is amazing. If I was just able to help this way, that's great.
Yeah.
And then we have other members who say, want resources or want us to recommend certain types of leave for them to care for their family. There's all kinds of situations. And it's just beautiful to be able to be there and to be trusted by those members and to support them. Because we always say it's a sign of strength to ask for support. Resilience is using the tools you have available to overcome an obstacle. It's not doing it by yourself. And I also like to say, at war, we never go like on a mission to attack alone. Like we go as a team. It's teamwork.
Okay.
So when we have problems in life, we have to face them together. Like that's strength. Like I really believe in communal resiliency. Like
Mhm.
resiliency is not just individual. It's about who you have around you to support you through it. And me as a chaplain, I'm seeing myself as being part of that, common resilience.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. If people want to follow, to learn more, where would you recommend that they go?
Sure. So you can go on the Humanist Canada website. There's a section about chaplains. But if you want to follow what I'm doing, I have a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook account. It's
Okay,
called
we'll link.
Military. Yeah, we'll do the links. We'll do links so that
Yeah,
anyone can come and kind of follow what we've been working on.
that's great. Any last thoughts?
I just want to say, if you're on the fence, if anyone is on the fence about becoming a military humanist chaplain, don't hesitate to reach out. Because, like I said, I was real on the fence about joining the military, wasn't sure if I could do it. And it's been such an amazing, rewarding, challenging, but fulfilling experience.
All right. Well, Marie-Claire Khadij, thank you so much for speaking with me today on Podcast for Inquiry.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Links for today's discussion can be found in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe and engage in the conversation. Comment, rate, and review. Email us at podcast@centerforinquiry.ca. We'd love to hear your perspective. The Podcast for Inquiry is brought to you by the Centre for Inquiry Canada. We are a national educational charity supporting reason, compassion, and secular values. To our supporters, thank you. If you have not yet contributed, please consider making a donation at centerforinquiry.ca/donate or becoming a member at centerforinquiry.ca/join. Your contribution supports our efforts to have rational and evidence-based decision-making everywhere. CFIC is on the web at centerforinquiry.ca. We are on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at CFI Canada. Podcast for Inquiry is produced and edited by Lee Shields, Zach Dumont, and Martin Zielinski. Music by Anthony Lazaro. I'm your host, Leslie Rosenblood. See you next time.